Okay. Um, so we'll learn about the concepts of a database, okay, and the DBMS. This is called the DBMS, or the Database Management Systems. Okay, and then we'll also talk about the relational database, so the RDBMS, which is the most popular types of database systems today.
For our assignments, do we need to have SQL Server installed?
Do you have SQL Server installed on your machine?
I do, but I'm just worried because she's never had a database.
Okay, you can, if you have Microsoft SQL Server installed, that's fine, that's great, you can use that as well. Or if you have MySQL, which is fine too, if you use PHP before, so you should have that installed. If not, we can, I'll show you how to install that through the example WAMP or one of those systems. And if you have Oracle, that's fine too, which is what database Java is for. But so I'll be doing examples using both the MySQL and then Microsoft SQL Server. You can connect, and we'll connect to both of those. If you have in your local machine, that's great. If not, we'll also connect to one of the servers here, which is the MySQL server we use here for Mercury. We'll have Apollo too, but we haven't established a lot of databases there yet. So we'll do we use one of the examples that we've been using for the last couple of years, which Ty created, so we'll use that database. Okay, so let's go down here, and this link here just gives you some more examples about JavaFX dealing with database. Okay, so what is a database system? Right? So a database system, just know that a database and the database systems are completely different things. Okay, so a database is just a file name, right? The file that contains a lot of data. A database could be, if you say a database, you can also say that it's an Excel file, because Excel file contains some data, right? And and the database that we're talking about is just it's the two-dimensional database type that you see in an Excel sheet. You have rows and columns of data, and so the database management system is a server, okay, a server that runs the database software. So because it's a system, it's a server, we need to connect to that server through Java, or if you're using a different language, there should be some type of API to connect to those servers. Okay, so let me zoom out just a little bit here. So this is again from the book. It kind of tells you where the database is in relation to your applications and your code. Okay, so the application user will be up here, so the user, and then you interact with the application that you write, the program, and then the application will then talks to the DBMS, which is the server itself. Okay, the server will host the actual database. Okay, so the server has the database in here. So this is what's called a kind of like a two-tier thing, because you have the user, the end user, to the system, the system that hosts your application, and then you have the DBMS server. So it's a two-tier, n-tier. Here is another example of a DBMS system that runs using an application. So you have the application that run on the program, and then that application program can connect to multiple database systems, right, or databases. You can have different kinds of database as well in the same program. Okay, you can do that. You can have one that connects to Oracle at the same time. You can also connect to MySQL Server and so forth. Okay, so this is just a diagram to show you what you can do with databases. So a database is so the database that we use today are usually called the relational database management systems. The word relational or relation or related is the key word here, because it tells us that each row here or each record can be related to another row in a different table. Okay, So if you can relate those two tables together, then they are related, so therefore this is a relational database. And again, this is the most popular types of database systems today. And there are many types. Okay, we have the object-oriented type as well. These are for like big data and to store, videos and audios, all those stuff. Like if you would think about YouTube, right? YouTube, all those data will be stored inside a big object-oriented database. Okay. But for this class, we'll be dealing with just the relational database that store data. So a database contains tables. Okay, so a table is, if you think a table is like a blueprint. Okay, if you think of an Excel sheet, you think of the two-dimensional table, right? That's a blueprint. And then a table has rows, usually has rows and columns, right? And the column, if you see here, so this blue table here, this is a table has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So each column here is called an attribute, okay, or a field. And attributes or fields, what do? They are basically the adjectives of a sentence, right? So the table itself is the noun, okay, and then the actual columns are your adjectives that describe what the table is about. Okay, so if you think of this in terms of object-oriented programming like Java, a table is like a class. Okay, so we design a class, class student, then you have a table called student. It's a class. Again, a class is what? It's a blueprint, right? So same thing. Table is a blueprint. And then a class, you have properties. So student has name, has student ID, has a grade, and so on, right? So each of those property is a field. So that's why in the language, when we learned about Java, we say all those are different names, right? You have the instance fields, and so on. So those are actually your attributes. Same things. Those can be you can think those as columns inside your table, right? And so when you create a new object out of the student class, you say, student S1 is equal to new student, then really you are actually creating the first record of that table, right? So it's that instance. So each row is really an instance of a table. Okay? So each, or a row, or we call those record, is a object of the table, whatever that table is. Okay, and then those columns or fields describe that object or that row. Okay, so you can see the correlation between object classes and a database table. Okay, so that's why, if you study more later on, you see that there's a thing called the entity framework that that you can use to design database tables and objects that you can actually directly link to a object-oriented program like Java. So we have so again, table has attributes, which is your columns, and you have the rows, which are your records, which are the instance of the table, and they're related in some ways. So when they're related, then you can actually tie these two tables together and using what's called a foreign key. Okay, so each table typically has what's called a primary key. So a primary key, so what's a primary key? For those of you who have taken the DB classes.
Isn't that like, I think it defines the table, right? It's the title of the table, kind of.
Not really title, but yeah.
It's like the ID, the number.
ID, yeah.
Yeah.
The 1, 2, 3, 4, and it tells you what line the column is in, or the row, I mean.
Okay. Yeah. So right, a primary key is a column in a table that has some unique data. Okay, you cannot have duplicate data in there. So if you think again back to a Excel table, you have each row is numbered by 1 through 1,000 or 1 through whatever it is, right? So that number cannot be duplicated. So you cannot have a row that has the same number of 2 in there. Okay, if it is, then that cannot be the primary key. So in this example here, this table does not have what it does, you can use the course ID here, right? Because it's unique. So a course cannot have the same ID. So therefore the first column of course ID will be what's called a primary key. Okay, so the primary key is used to order your data, order all these records in a particular order. So if you don't have a primary key, then it will be real difficult to organize your data. And when they are not organized in that order, then it's really hard to search data. Okay, so
I just have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
The jar file that you have linked in the Blackboard shell. Trying to extract it, and it's just throwing error.
The jar file for
That's in the chapter folder. It's MySQL connector Java 5137.
oh that one.
Java.
Yeah, that one, right. You're not gonna extract that at all. Yeah, you will just have to be and pull that into Eclipse later on.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're not gonna extract it. Okay. Okay, so table has primary keys, and if you want to associate a table with another table, then you would use something called a foreign key. Okay, and then connect those tables together. So let's see what else we have down here. Yeah, so it doesn't have it here, but in the book, let me see. I think it has some information here. So the book it talks about integrity constraints here. Again, this is the foreign key I just mentioned. Okay, so for example, if you look at this course, these two tables here, right? So the first table is the enrollment table. It has 4 fields, 1, 2, 3, 4. The second table is the course. This course here has about 5 columns. Okay. If you look at these 2 tables here, you see that there is a field in the enrollment called course ID, and then there's another one, and the course table also has course ID. You see the arrow linking those 2 columns together. That means that they are tied together in some way, so they are connected. So that means that you're actually creating what's called a foreign key that will connect those together. Okay, so in this case, the course so you can say, I want to know, for student who has this SSN, right? Which course he or she enrolls, what grade that he or she has. So this table only has 4 of those information, but I also want to find out the course title, the number of credits, and so on. So how do you get those data down here in a different table? Well, you can match it by using the course ID field here and this table, right? Because they're linked together, you can say, return to me, the student's SSN number, the grade that he or she has, the course number, and then the number of credits. Okay, and then how do you jump from here to there is we have a matching course ID number, right? So for course ID number 11111, then that will be the first row in this table and the first row of the other table. And then when you pull that out, you get all these data together in a virtual table. Okay, so you get a virtual table that is comprised of everything in this first row plus everything here in this second row. So you get a virtual table of about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 columns, right? So they combine together. You can combine together so that you can get the data from both tables. And that is the job of your foreign key. Okay. And without this key here, you cannot tell. Because if there's no course ID here, how do you know that this course here is taken by this student, right? You cannot tell. So you have to relate those 2 tables together by using some type of unique ID that would map it out. Okay, so that's the foreign key. So it talks about the primary key and then the foreign key here. So the primary key is, again, the unique key or column inside the table. The foreign key is usually the a copy or a column that will reference the primary key of the primary table, right? So it's for example here again. So if you look at these two tables here, okay. This second table here, the course. You see that the course ID here is the first column, okay, and the course ID has 111, and so that field, this is your primary key because it's unique, okay. There's no duplicates. You cannot have duplicates there, but these you do have duplicates. You have V3s, the same course. Here you might have the same course subject ID, computer science. So, right. Course number, that should also probably be unique, right? You might not have the same course number. And then this table up here, you have 5 fields, and then somehow these two are related. So one of these columns is the actual the foreign key. So if this is your main table, and if the course ID is your primary key, then the second table up here, this has to be the foreign key, okay, which is it would map to the primary key of the other table. Okay, when you do that, then this is called the foreign key. So inside this table, you might have your own unique primary key. It looks like it could be the SSN, but in this case it may not, because we have duplicates, right? SSN cannot have duplicates. So this table is a little bit weird in how it's designed here. But you might have your own a separate column for the primary key. Okay? So just that, the difference is that the primary key is the unique column inside that, we call this the parent table. And then if the parent table's primary key is being referenced or used inside another table, then that referenced that table is whose references the parent table is called the child table, and the child table has the parent's key, which is called a foreign key in that table. Okay. So just some terminologies here. And then SQL. It's pronounced SQL, or sometimes you hear the term Sql. It's this universal language that it's a declarative language that allows programmers or DBAs to use to make queries, okay, to retrieve data from a database. Okay, it's a universal. I mean, it's a universal standard. I mean, all databases will understand this language. Okay, just like if English is the universal language, then every nation will understand it, right? But of course, each language, I mean, each nation can still have its own local language. So, by the same token, each database system also has its own local language as well, which is pretty much an extension to the SQL statements. So some syntax you use in Microsoft SQL Server may not work inside Oracle, unless if the statements is a ANSI or ANSI standard. Okay, so there's a standard SQL statements, and then there's a local that is local to these type of systems down here. Okay, so you have all these different types of databases systems, and there are many more. And all of these will understand the SQL language plus their own. Okay. So sometimes if you write a code or a script inside to work for one of these systems, sometimes it's always good to use the standard SQL statements so that it can be portable to any system. If you have something that is uniquely designed for Microsoft products, then if you try to run the script inside Oracle, it might crash, and vice versa. Okay? So unless you're pretty sure that that script will only run for Microsoft products or Oracle or DB2, then so be it. But usually you want to make everything as universal as possible. So this one here, this section 34.3.1, I kind of show you how you can access the MySQL. Okay, this is the MySQL database to access database and so on. Now, so do you have MySQL installed on your laptops? Who has, or do you know who have? Do you have one?
I have a server, a virtual server, so
Okay.
on one of my laptops, so works fine.
Okay.
Anytime. It's just a regular LAN.
Yeah. So I wanted to. Okay. Well, let's do this. Do you have XAMPP or WAMP or MAMP installed on your machines?
Yeah.
Okay. If you have it, usually you have MySQL in there. If you don't have it, then I want you to go ahead and install it so we can run these examples here. Okay. Without it, it might be really much harder to understand. But these are some of the commands, some very basic commands of how you can log into MySQL and do some example code. These are all these you see in green here are, well, not from here are what's called SQL statements, right? SQL language. Okay, and these are very common throughout all the database systems.
Does
Okay.
the Java dev kit ship with some support for some built-in database?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it does. It might have, but I mean, it might have support, but I'm not sure it has its own database though. So that's the thing.
What would you say is the best one? XAMPP or?
I use the examp because that is like the X means you can use for both any system.
Yeah.
So if you want to get the map, that'll be the AMAP MAMP. That's for Macintosh.
Yeah.
The window will be the WAMP. Okay, but I use the X for the examp that can go in Linux and any machine. So you can install that directly by going to XAMPP XAMP, or if you search for that term, and it will get. Sometimes you see there with a double P. Sometimes you have a double X instead of double P. How it's used is sometimes they use that interchangeably. But if you search for XAMPP, then you can go ahead and download that server. So it's a server. It's a web server. Okay, not web server. I mean, it's a server that would it's an environment that allows you to host web servers like Apache. Okay, so this one here comes with Apache, MariaDB, PHP, and Perl all together in one package. So if you install this application, then you will have all those working. I think it also has the PHP-MyAdmin installed as well to access your database. So why don't you do that? It shouldn't take that long. It should take really short to download. I'm not sure about the installation process. It may take a while, but if you download that again for your machine, whichever is your machine, if it's Windows, you can click that install, and then
Did you record this?
Yeah, I think I'm recording.
Oh.
Yeah, just make sure. Yes. Thank you. Right, so if you download and install this, then notice that you see that they use a MariaDB. Okay. Previously is MySQL, which is kind of the same thing. MariaDB is a new database system that is now kind of integrated into most of the systems here because of one reason. Okay, used to be MySQL was the main database, and after Oracle, right, they took over Java, and then they took over MySQL. Then because MySQL used to be open source, okay, completely open source, and when Oracle took over, then slowly they change it into the non-open source. So there's some limitations to MySQL. And so now the open source community were not very happy, so they came up with a new one called MariaDB. Okay, so MariaDB is very similar to MySQL. It's completely open source, and so that's why if you download and install this application, you'll see that it's MariaDB. But functionality-wise, it's very similar. It's almost the same as MySQL, because it's actually the same. It's the same system, just name it differently. And so now it's a different brand, so they have more control of that in the open source. Whereas MySQL, you have some limitation there in terms of licensing. So.
When did they prioritize it?
I don't know exactly when, but since Oracle bought it, they took over. Then slowly, they license those out to companies, and then it's no longer an open source. There are certain things that they can or cannot do because of ownership. So it's kind of that's the case. So if you install this now, and if you have it running, then you will see something that says XAMP. If you type it, which I don't have it here for some obvious reasons, you should see the orange logo just like this one here. And I think I have it over here. Yeah, like this one here. So if you click on it, if you run it on the control, it will look like this, because we have this environment here. So you have this control, and here we have Apache, because it came with Apache. Again, it used to be MySQL, which is kind of the same. So you can think that MySQL and MariaDB is the same for now, because the how the use is similar. Also come with FileZilla, Mercury, and others. So Tomcat may not come with it. If it's not, we'll have to install this manually later on, because we're going to use Tomcat as well when we get to the other topics in Java server phases and Java SP and so on. But so if you have this up and running, then this control panel, you can now start Apache, right? And Apache, so you have these port numbers here. You might have an issue with Apache running because of the port numbers, right? So the port number is not, I set it to 8,000. By default, the port number is your web server number. So the default is 80. Okay, so what that means is that if I go into my browser and if I type, localhost, right? If I type localhost, then you can see that it's IIS7. It's Microsoft for my machine. And this is the default port because I also have IIS installed, and this is the port 80, which is the default port. Okay? Since I have it here already, it's already taken by Microsoft IIS, then Apache cannot use the same port. You have to use a different port. So when that happens, then you have to change the port number. And you do that by going to the config here. Okay, so config here, you want to go into the first one, Apache httpd.conf. So you open the file, and it's a text file. And if you scroll down somewhere in here, you will see that it has a port number. Usually it will say 80 as a default. Again, which is already taken by IIS. So give it a different number. You can do 81 or 8,000 or something else. Okay, so I use 8,000. You can also use 80 if you want. Okay, some big port numbers, so it doesn't interfere with other port numbers. Some other ports are reserved, like 43 and 21, 22, right? Those FTP ports, you can't overwrite those. Those are reserved. So port 80, port 8,000. And if you go down and look for any of the port numbers, it says 80, you change all those to 8,000. So there are, I think, probably a few. So here's another one. You change that to 80 or 8,000. And then once you are done, just save the file. Okay, save the file, and then you just restart, and then it should work. Okay, if it doesn't work, then probably something else. Okay, so if you, for example, if you want to start Tomcat, you might see that I might have a problem because Tomcat shares the same port I set as 8000, so it may not run. So you might have a port conflict. If it does, then just go assign a new port to that system. It's not doing it. So Apache is running, and then MySQL also, you want to make sure it runs. So you click on it to start, and if it's green, then that's fine. So MySQL runs on port 3307. And again, that port is, I changed it to 307. I think it's default is like 304 or something. Okay. So if you don't change any port, if you click start and it runs, you have all green lights over here, then you're good to go. Okay. If it is not, then it will tell you that you have like port 3 is used by another system, and then therefore it will not run. So if that's the case, then you want to go and change the config to change the port number. So right now, my machine is running. Okay, so MySQL is running, and then to get there, to get to the command prompt, like you see over here, to run these code here on the DOS, we're going to use DOS command prompt. Okay, so if you go here, and on the right side there's a shell command button. So if you click on shell, they should load this DOS command prompt, and this is where you would type your command. So let me just see if I can make this a little bit bigger in terms of font. Options, cursor size, layout, color, font. Does that mean, is it bigger this way? 10, 20, 12. Well, that's the screen size. Yeah, so if you can do this, well, yeah, I can't find the one that can change the font size. But anyway, so if you're here, you see that I'm inside my exam folder and it has a pound sign in front of it. So here I can type the information like you see over here on the left. Let me go back here, and then if I do this, if I type in MySQL space, when you run your command here, you want to run at the root. Okay, and I don't think you have to use a password. You need to use a password. If you install XAMPP and then you activate the MySQL server, if it's on, then if you just type MySQL and if you enter, right, you get this welcome message, and now you see that it says MariaDB. Okay, because again it's MariaDB, but still it's really the same as just MySQL. And then from here, I can type the command you see over here. So if you want to know how many databases you have inside this server, then you just type the command show databases, plural, and you always terminate your statement with a semicolon. Okay, if you don't terminate that, you'll see an arrow key still waiting for more commands. Okay, until you terminate that statement with the semicolon, then it will show you, it will execute the command. And here it has. It shows you that there are two databases. You have the information schema and the test. And these are the default databases that is built when you install this machine. So now if you want to select one of these databases, then you issue the command use. Okay, use which one? Let's just say use test. Okay, and then that will say database changed, and then now you see from the square brackets was none, now you're in the test database. Okay, so I'm inside a test database. So our database would usually contains tables. So you want to know how many tables are there? Well, use the same thing, right? Use show tables, and then it will tell you that there is a users table in there, right? And if it has a lot of more tables, then you have more. And if you want to create your own database, then you can just say create database, and then you give it a name. You say MyDB and terminate that with a semicolon, and then hit enter. If you get this error, it says access denied, we use a localhost. This means is that you have to run, because you don't have access rights to this system server, you have to run as a root. Okay, so when you get this issue at home, when you try it, you get this problem, please run inside command as a root. So again, back here, use MySQL-u root and then just hit enter. Okay, so let me get out of this again. To get out of the MySQL, this is what's called this. What you see over here, it is a DOS prompt, but really you're inside a different monitor utility called MySQL Monitor. Okay, so this is like a tool that allows you to execute SQL statements. And so to get out of that, just type in exit, and then that should take you out, say bye, and then get back out to the XAMPP shell. And now if you want to log in again, so just again MySQL-u, u means for user. You can put a space after that, that's fine. If you don't, you could just put the word root here, it's okay. But I usually use a space, it's just easier to read. So put root here. If there's a password, then you put the P here like he did in the book. Otherwise, you just leave it out. I don't think we have, I think you shouldn't have any password built in when you install this. So if you use a different user, you can, because in database you can create different users, right? And then so that user will have a password usually. So if you type that in there and hit enter, well, I have a problem here. It doesn't let me do it. No, it's not a semicolon. Yeah, it just, okay, it,
Do you have the space on the U? The root?
No, does mine work? Yeah, mine works.
yours work, right? Yeah, so mine doesn't work. Yeah.
Key switch.
No, the P is for the password. I don't think I use password in here. Well, u roots. Oh, interesting.
Throw in a V switch, you can get some verbosity.
Okay. Well, let me try. Is there a password? Okay, so I guess it does use password. But if it does, it should still be root. Okay, so default is root. If it doesn't have, if it doesn't ask you for a password, just make sure you put the user root, and then if it doesn't take it like mine, you put -p there to ask you for the password, and then type root again. Okay, I think that's the default password. So now it should be like before. If I type in show databases, you'll probably see there. Yeah, so now I have a little bit more. So the root has access to more, whereas before we only see the first and the last. In between we didn't see it, right? And so if you want to create, bless you, create a new database, so we do the same thing, create, and by the way, your these statements are not case sensitive, so I can have uppercase, lowercase, it doesn't matter, okay? But usually when you write in the code, all the keywords are in uppercase and in SQL statements. It just looks nicer, just also by convention. So I'm going to say create database, call it my first DB, right? And then semicolon.
Can you show me the URL for your XAMPP?
The local XAMPP.
You're using real quick.
You mean like in here? When I run this?
I just want to see the URL to where to download the
Oh, over here.
server from.
Yeah, ApacheFriends.org.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so now I can see if my database is there. So in the DOS command prompt, you can use the up down arrow key. Okay, if you use the up arrow key, it will retrieve the previous statements that you typed so far, and so you don't have to type it again, right? unless you go up and say show databases, you can type it all the way if you want to, that's fine too. You see that now we have added this new database called MyFirstDB. And if I want to use that, then I want to say use MyFirst. And if you type in the first few characters, you press the tab key. No, not the tab key, the space bar, what is it? This special key, which one is it? Maybe it doesn't work here, but I thought this is a special key. You can type it would do a shortcut. Anyway, so first DB, and then now you see again now in the brackets here is my first DB. So if you type in show tables, there's no table, right? Okay, because there's none. So you can create tables, and creating tables is again has some ways. A few examples in here. Well, we can create a table here, kind of like this, right? You create a table. This is a syntax here. A table called course, and then followed by parentheses, and then you would separate each field. So if you look at this, it's like your programming class, right? You say public class called course, and then inside it you have a field called course ID, the data type, course subject ID, data type, right? And then course number, data type, title, data type, and so on. And then the course ID here, it says make this course ID the primary key, the primary field. So that means that this record, this field here cannot have duplicate data. It has to be unique throughout all the way throughout. Okay, so the char type here, it means a character of 5 allows up to 5 characters only. This has only 4 characters. The course number is an integer type. The title has a variable character of up to 50. Okay. So the difference between a char and a varchar here is that this is called the variable size, right? So that means if you reserve that much space, and if you don't use all 50, then it's not going to use all 50. Okay, it will only use up to 50. You only allow up to 50 characters space. But if you only use 10, then the rest 40 of those will not be used, so therefore they don't use memory. Whereas the char, if you use char 5, then that means it accumulates 5 space as memory. And if you only use 1, it's still going to use 5 space as memory. Okay, so that's the difference between the char and the varchar. Okay. And then you have the integer, and then also the integer type, you can also specify the size as well. How many numbers can you have? If you don't leave it, if you leave it open, then it's a variable as well. I think it's to the maximum size. Okay, so you can do something like that. In the command, you would do, for example, here you can type the same thing: create table, and we'll call it, if you call it the same thing as here, course, right? And then followed by a paren. If you hit enter, it's just going to keep going until you end with a semicolon. So the first could be course ID, and then char of 5, then comma. You have to separate each field with a comma. You can do on a single line like this if you want, but it could be hard to read, so you want to use a separate line for each is fine. The not null here means that this field cannot be empty. You have to have some type of data there. You can leave it blank. That's what it means. And the course ID also cannot be null because we set that to a primary key, so that means it always has data. The course number can be empty because it didn't say not null. You didn't force it, so that means a course number record, a certain record might not have a course number. Okay, so course number, integer type, title, 50 characters, up to 50 characters. This cannot be null. And then number of credits, integer type. And then finally, we want to set the primary key of the course ID field. And then we can close it, and then semicolon, execute. Okay, if it's successfully, it will tell you that it's successfully, it's okay. Otherwise, it will throw you in a bunch of error. Okay, so once you create that table, then you can create another table if you want like this. So if you run these examples here, you will type exactly as this, right? And then keep executing until you create all these tables here. And notice again, this table has a primary key, the SSN, right? This table over here, enrollment, has an SSN field as well, same as this. But down here it says this SSN, okay, is now a foreign key, right? Foreign key that references the student SSN. So this foreign key, this field here, will map directly to the primary key, which is over here. Okay, so these two tables are connected together through the SSN field. It's a primary and for the parent table. This is a child table because it has the foreign key. It references the parent table, and it uses the parent table's primary key as a foreign key. Okay, so this is called a foreign keyword constraints. That means these two tables are connected, so you cannot delete data in one of these tables without deleting one for the other one first. And it has a second foreign key here. Another one has course ID as well. So the course ID references this table up here. So references this table here. So this is also the parent table of this enrollment table. And so this table here has two references to two different tables. Okay, so if you look at this, you'll see that this is kind of weird because if you're usually in classes, one class cannot inherit from two parents, right? But in database, if you think about this, if it's inheritance, then you can. But this is not inheritance. It's just a connection. So if you draw a line, this will be pointing to this as well as the table up here. Okay. And then if you want to drop the table, if you want to remove it, delete the table, then you would say drop table and then table name. Okay. So so now we know that this table has those fields, and if you want to add data to the table, then you will use the insert statement. Okay. So just add some data to this table here. I'm going to do like insert, okay, into, that's the syntax, if I remember correctly, into the table called course. Okay, and then here you will list all these fields that you had earlier. The first field is the course ID. The second is the course number. And then we have the title, num of, uh-oh, thank you, course ID, number, the num of credits. I think that's it, right? So, let me expand this a little bit, I can do, okay, well, let me do it this way. Yeah, so let me just move it to the next line, like that. And then, so I messed up here, but let's do this again. Cancel. Oh, great. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to yeah, here, insert into this course table ID, whatever it is, and then after this you put the word values, and inside the value here you put all these data. So the course ID, since this is the primary key, it should be unique. It's a type of characters up to 5. So you could put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's fine, right? It's characters, so actually, Charles, you're going to put the single quote here. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the second field is the course number, would be like maybe it's also a number, so you can say 101. No, I think I missed something. Yeah, I missed some stuff here. Let's do it again. I missed.
Subject ID.
Yeah, I missed that one, right? Right, subject ID, and then we have the course number, and then title, num of credits, and then I think that's it. So now values, put all caps, values. The value is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the course ID. The subject ID would be this, again, another character, so I can say CS. Just CS is fine. Computer science. And then the course number is integer, so we can say 1, 2, 5, I don't know. Title will be, let's just say, Java 2. And then number of credits is 4 credits, for example. Okay, and then close that. You terminate, and if all goes well, we say okay. If it's not, it will put an error. Okay, so it seems to be working. And now I says query okay, 1 row affected. I mean, 1 row affected just means 1 row has been added to the table. Okay. So now, if you want to see what's inside the table, then you will use the select statement. Select, followed by the column or the fields you want to display. If you want to display everything, you put a star. Okay, it's a wildcard to display all the fields, all these different columns we have here. From the table called course. Okay, that's all it is. This is the simplest select statements. And then it will show you that you have a course. These are the fields and the data that I entered earlier. Okay. The star shows all the columns. If you have 100 columns, it will show 100 columns. If you want to limit that, I just say I just want to show the course ID and the course title. You can say select and just pick the course ID, right? Show the course ID, comma, the title, okay, from the course table. And now you only get you only see those two. Okay. So if you want to add another data, you can again go use the up arrow key until you get those information, and then now you can just go and modify this to, let's just say 3 here. This could be like maybe I don't know, PHP, and then course could be like 135. This is also CS. The values for this would be a 146. Okay. Hit enter. Okay, so if I go and show that, you see now I added 2 records. So I create 2 instances of the table course. Okay. Then if you want to delete a record, there's a delete as well. There's a drop. So the drop and delete are different. Okay. So delete only deletes the data inside the table. The drop here will actually delete the entire table plus everything it contains. Okay, so those two are different. If you want to delete the PHP class course, then you can say delete table course. I think where. Okay, if you do this, if you do delete table course, I think then it's going to wipe out everything inside here. So all the data will be gone. If you just want to delete a very specific course, then you want to filter so that you can pick and choose only that course. Let's see, delete course where course ID equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Right, I think that's it. So that means that delete only the PHP course and then not the other one. Okay. I think I have an error here. Delete from, hold on. I think my syntax is wrong. Delete from, yeah, maybe not table, but delete from course. Okay, let's see. Okay, so yeah, delete from the course table, where the course ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 only. So if you have a lot of IDs that has the matching number, they will find it. But in this case, you probably 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it may not. Yeah, it will delete PHP. Okay, so if you want to see what's in there, you can say go show again, and you see that PHP has been deleted from, right? And if you want to, if you go back and insert the PHP class back in again, and if I show that again, so PHP has been added back. Okay, I just used the same statements. And now if you want to say, I want to drop, delete everything, or should say delete from course, okay, you see that there's 2 rows affected. And now if I look inside that course, you see that there's no more data because I wiped out everything in there. So you gotta be careful what you do with the delete here. Okay? If you do that, all the data will be wiped out. The table is still there. The table, course is still there. That's why I'm able to use it. If I go back and then add that back in there, right? And then if I search for that, you see that PHP is back. And if you want to drop this table, then you use the word drop. Drop table called course. If you do that though, it's going to delete all the data here plus the table. Okay, so this is a very dangerous command because it will not give you a warning. Usually it will say, are you sure you want to do that? Right? This one doesn't. It just say, boom, done.
Is that why you like version your data sometimes?
Yes, yeah, you version it or you save it, you back up all the time. Okay, and if you accidentally delete it and boom, oops, it's done, right? And then now the table is no longer there, I think. So if you go select from course, it will say course doesn't exist. So all the data, everything is deleted. If you work for a really big company, if you do this, they can fire you the next day if you have some really important data because you lost those data. So.
Back up your data.
That's right. Back up your data.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what you would do. As you can see, the command, the insert is right here. The commands are okay, right? It's kind of not so fun if you're doing the code this way, but that's why it comes also with phpMyAdmin to help you. So if you run Apache, click the admin. It's going to run Apache. Okay, and I'm going to change the port number to 8,000. That's my port number. Okay, so you should see this inside Apache if you install that successfully. Okay, this is the inside the dashboard inside localhost. Port 8000 runs XAMPP server, Apache server. Otherwise, you go through IIS. And up here on the top right, you see phpMyAdmin. Okay. If you click on phpMyAdmin, I'm not sure if mine connected. Mine might not connect. Yeah, I have some error here. Yeah, I have some error. But if you don't have errors, then you should be able to access phpMyAdmin, and inside there you can have a better interface to add data. So I'm going to see if I can go into Apollo. Okay, so it will look something like this, exactly the same as this. It's the same interface, and it's going to ask you to log in. I think it may not ask you to log in at all. It just connect directly. But I think for this one, let's see. Great. Does it let me? No. Yeah, I can't log in there for some reason. I have to fix this later. But once you get in there, you have a different interface. Let me see, PHP myadmin. Yeah, for some reason I don't have X. Yeah, it will look just like this here. Okay, so you can see all your database over here, and you can create new databases, using the GUI interface. So you don't have to do all this coding like we did earlier. Okay, you can do easily from here. And you go here, if you click on the database command here, then it's going to go and ask you to add a new table, a new database. So right here, this is another one. Show you all kinds of databases. This tables on this side, and if you create a new database, so right here you put a name here, and then just click create. Right, that's what I did. Like over here, right up here, I say create database, call my first database. All you do here is just basically you put my first database here, click create, and it does it for you. Okay, so it's really user friendly. I'm not sure why I can't log in there, but that's a tool to help you build database. And then once you go in there, then you can go and then create tables. Okay, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Create table for that database, and then you can create all these records here, all these fields visually in there as well. So it's very easy, just like an Excel sheet. You add tables, and then you add rows, columns to that table, and then you can populate the data just by going here and just say click edit, and then it will let you enter data to those fields. So very easy. Yeah, and then it will look something like this, right? You create, this is how you create columns. So this column called ID, you have the data type integer, you specify all these different types of information here. You make that a primary key, you select that. Next will be a description, the data type is varchar, how many character length do you allow? Up to 255 characters max. Okay, and then so on. You create all these fields you need, and then at the end there's a button that says go or OK, and then you click that, and then it will submit it, and then you'll create your table, and you have something like this. So you have like table, all these columns here, the data type, and so on. You can also view the data as well. If you click on like the browse, and then you will view all the data as well. And you can edit it very easily through the interface. So for building database, you will probably want to use one of those tools, the PHP myadmin, or there's another tool called Microsoft MySQL Benchwork. I have it down here somewhere. Show you later. Okay, and then I will show you one more thing, and then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and we'll do the rest and the code. So now I'm going to show you Microsoft SQL Server. Very easy, right? So if you install Microsoft SQL Server, you have a system called SSMS. Okay, this one I have it here. So SQL Server Management Studio. And this one here is, has a really kind of similar interface to the PHP myadmin. It's GUI, has a GUI interface. Let me exit this out. Why doesn't it let me go in there? Okay, for some reason it won't let me go in there. Okay, well, maybe it's a good time for a break then. We'll take a break, we'll come back, and I'll figure out why it's not running. It was running earlier. It just like stopped responding now. Okay, so I'll see you back in about, 5 or 10 minutes?